Okay, no longer allowed to swear. Well, you can swear if you want to, but vaguely family friendly. So it is the pre-show ramble. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Hi,
How are we all?
Michael.
Hi, Rory. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Jacob.
Hello, Michael. Hello,
This is-
Rory. Hello, Ben.
This is the bit where we just sort of like let people come on board and catch up. That's all good. Jacob, what were you eating in this most ASMR friendly kind of sound?
Just before we went on, I just made I don't know, some chicken and broccoli and a lot of chili and Brussels sprouts.
I was going to say it looked very green, like
it's very green, very healthy. Actually, my kids love Brussels sprouts, so I managed that. So that's good.
See, I was starting to panic, because Yoss wasn't here. I was like, is he okay? Should we call him?
Yeah, it's just like the one, the only. He's always here. Bless his heart. Yeah. It's all good.
Around our house, we call them Brussels crows in honor of the actor.
But I like Russell Crowe. I don't like Brussels. Brussels sprouts are awful.
It kind of smuggles them in, right? It makes you like them more.
I don't know, man. Here they're very much sort of like a Christmas only kind of thing. Would you say, Rory? Or no, you're weird. You eat vegetables all the time.
Yeah, no, mostly like our family aren't big into them. But
because they're wretched.
Well, if you do a lot of flavoring with them, but apparently there's a big Halloween thing where you coat them in like chocolate or white chocolate and I think it's white chocolate so that they kind of look like marshmallows. And
absolute
that's the trick. I know. It's like, how could you do that to the poor children?
It seems like you just want to eat marshmallows, though. Like if you're hiding Brussels sprouts that much,
Well, it's more the trick aspect of Halloween where you give them out and the kids think they're getting a marshmallow and then bite into that and discover healthy Bristol spread.
Yeah, but my daughter would be happy about it if it's cooked well, the right way.
That sounds horrible. Also, good evening, Mike. Hello, welcome. Cool. All right, I am going to hit the countdown button because that's a thing we have now, and then we'll be back into to do the show proper. So I've just got to do some clicking and make things happen, and here we go. All right, so see you after this. That needs better music, but I'll get that sorted out for next week.
That's when Jacob starts whispering.
Anyway, it is Wednesday evening here in the UK. It is Wednesday afternoon over in the States, and over in Denmark, it's an hour ahead of us. Wednesday night. There you go. And it's another Hub Games Hangouts with us, your delightful and beautiful and handsome hosts. I'm Michael from Hub Games. Hello. Over there is Rory. Rory, how you doing?
Hey, everybody.
And we have special guests again this week. Two special guests. So first of all, over from the States is Ben Haskins from Floodgate Games. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, sir. It's lovely to have you on board.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be good times. And like we said, all the way from glamorous Denmark, the home of culture, from Hush Hush Projects, makers of Fog of Love, it's Jacob.
Yay.
How are you?
I'm very fine, thanks.
I'm
Excellent.
so happy, you guys are willing to join us when we give you no idea what it is we're going to be talking about. You're just like lambs to the slaughter.
I saw the Facebook post earlier today, so you might change the subject.
You have vague ideas. I mean, so I've given this episode the title "The State of Independence" because we're all independent games companies, and we're all in a bit of a state thanks to COVID, so it's all good. We'll see how it goes. But no, it'll be grand. So we're just going to have a discussion this evening about the wonderful world of independent games companies. How we do stuff, how we do things similarly, how we do things differently, the things that brought us together, and all those good things. But before we kick off, Ben, what, if anything, have you been playing? Give us an insight into your game table.
So 2 things. One is I've been playing a lot of a prototype of an upcoming game, which is mostly always true, but we just finished a 3-week playtesting round. And it was awesome, but super intense. And that was great. But games that I'm not working on, I actually just played Can't Stop recently. For the first time.
Sid Saxon's classic.
Yeah. It was great. It was mentioned. I was part of a tabletop mentorship program, and my mentee mentioned this game, and I was like, I haven't played this game, so I needed to go grab it and play it because Acquire is one of my favorite games. So I felt like
a man of taste and quality. Yeah, Acquire is like my favorite game of all time. So
yeah, it's an amazing game, and Can't Stop was super cool. I mean, definitely a way lighter experience, but a lot going on for just the little package that it is.
There's so many delightful different versions of it as well. So like I'm going to assume that the version you've got over there in States is the giant stop sign shaped one
with the oddly spaced squares.
Yep. And then in like Europe, it's played like you're climbing a mountain, but the mountain's made out of fabric. And then there's like a really weird little Korean version as well from Mandu Games, which is just Rory Winnie would love it. It's the most minimalist thing you've seen in your life. It's very, very chill. And yeah, it's nice. It's all good. Jacob, have you been managing to play anything? Obviously, you have small people around you most of the time, so I'm assuming the focus is mostly on that.
Yeah, but yesterday evening I actually got to play some a game I haven't played before that is very good. In Hotep, playing. It's extremely non-thematic, but you're playing Egyptian. I don't know, builders and shipping a lot of stuff back and forth. But it's super cool with where you have a lot of tough choices. It's basically an advanced version of I Divide, You Choose. But all the time, everything you do is always, I can only make part of the choice. And then you can either screw me up by making the final choice of, for example, where my ship is going, or you can make the choice yourself. And then I can put you somewhere. So it's always about deciding whether you want to do something or screw the other ones up, or and it's super elegant. I think it's a wonderful game. I like that. And then right now, and today I'm learning Marvel Champions, because actually Rory talked about it on Facebook, and I had bought it for a long time ago, but now I want to play it because Rory said I should.
It is very good. My game of the year last year, but
nice.
Rory, what about you? Aside from Marvel Champions.
Well, I will start with the game that shall not be named for Tony Boydell. Well, actually, Tony's not here, so I can't name it.
You can say what you like.
Yeah, we played Ashes because we're kind of, again, excited about the reboot, and everything I'm seeing for the new cards coming out for that has got me really excited. I think just as a game, it never got its kind of time in the sun that it really deserved. So I'm kind of glad to see that. You don't have to record it, Michael.
I'm recording it for Tony.
Okay. It's actually been a busy week game-wise. I've been doing a lot of solo plays of Prism Arena, testing out the rules for that and making sure they hold up. Even testing in a few new Mocon for future expansions and seeing how they work. I have been playing Marvel Champions because from the wonderful Fanboy 3 of Manchester, we've ordered the Rise of the Red Skull expansion, you and me, Michael. So that's arriving hopefully tomorrow. So I kind of wanted to get back up to speed and had a go at taking on Green Goblin. So that was good fun.
Cool.
And Test of Honor, the minis game, which has become like my favorite minis game ever. It's just super light rulebook, super thematic, just think of any Akira Kurosawa movie that you've watched, or any samurai movie, and you get to play it on the tabletop. It's actually set up here behind me, because I even started kind of coming up with some kind of solo rules so I could play it some more. I love how everything in it like plays out like a movie in your head, and yeah, just really enjoying that. So hopefully I'll be catching up with Aaron this week to give that for us to continue our campaign around that as well.
I like how you stepped in there super fancy, thinking that we've all watched Akira Kurosawa movies. So, like, I ain't that classy.
Seven Samurai, no?
No, Magnificent Seven. Yeah, Seven Samurai. No, I
Oh
should.
my god! Oh
Yeah,
my god! Go and watch it, like Akira Kurosawa, any movie.
All right. Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. That's the end of the show. I've been ordered to go and watch The Seven Samurai. We'll see.
Can't just stream it.
That's
for
more
everyone
important. Yeah.
Just throw it through as a watch party. Cool. All right. So I'm looking forward to Marvel Champion stuff arriving, because there's a couple of things that I'm missing. So like the Black Widow deck and the Hulk deck. So they'll be landing, and it's always interesting playing that to see how the feel of each deck is. Because I think that's one thing they've done very well with Marvel Champions. Is like each hero does feel significantly different. You know, they all had their little idiosyncrasies, and that's quite lovely. We had folks over last week. Probably the highlight of what we played was Concept, actually. That hit the table for the first time in ages. And we did not... We have a rule that we never play for points, because there's no point. It's like playing charades for points. Like, you play the game for the enjoyment of it. And I swear to God, like, we were at it for like 2 hours, just going around the table, around. And there was one where my good friend Rain was trying to do, eventually we discovered it was E.T. Now, considering that E.T. is literally 2 letters in the English alphabet, the 17 and a half minutes that it took them to put this message forward of the extraterrestrial was either a massive slight on us as players or a massive slight on Rain as an information giver. But yeah, it was great. Erin was actually sitting upstairs, and like Rain was just howling in like laughter stroke anger at us as we got more and more frustrating for them. And yeah, it was good times. I need to get it, hit it more again. And it's I think even though it's like, it was Spiel des Jahres listed, I still think it's incredibly underrated. So every time it does hit the table again, it's always a lot of fun.
It's funny. It's one of those games that I've kind of overlooked. So it'll be interesting to give that. My list of games I have to try is growing exponentially.
My favorite thing about Concept was like having played it when I played it the first time, I was like, this isn't going to be nearly enough iconography to communicate complex ideas. And then it's amazing what you're able to get across with just that relatively small set of stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive. I also love the giant version of it as well, like the huge playmat version. Just throw it out on the table. Like the big version, I think, was the same size as the Mega City playmat, so it's like 3 foot by 3 foot. And you're just sort of like hurling stuff all over it. It's good. It's good times. It's also a great convention game as well. Like the Repos folks always have their super giant version of it out at S and everything. So
I was going to ask actually for those watching. I know Mike and Yoss are there. So what games have you been playing? So I know Mike's answer because I was playing against him. The game that shall not be named.
What were you playing, Rory?
I'm not going to say it.
What were you playing, Rory?
A certain game. No, you're going to
What if somebody look? Okay, so the view count has just gone up. That person has just come in. They don't know what you were playing. It might be an idea for you to tell them what game you were playing.
A game about the Phoenix Born and them rising from like burnt wood and fuel.
Jesus Christ! Here we go again. All right.
It's like playing Concept.
I need Concept.
This here, that. The main concept is that. All right, so let us talk about things and stuff. So Ben, Jacob, like I said, thank you very much for joining us as we're going to talk about being an indie, I guess. Ben, could you give us a bit of a rundown? What's the like the potted history of Floodgate Games?
Sure. I made a game in 2012 called Legacy Gears of Time, a game about time travel and technology, and put it up on at the time, relatively small site called Kickstarter, and got some people to trade me money for an idea of mine, and that was amazing. Delivered on that, did a couple other games in between, about one or so a year, until publishing Sagrada in 2017, and that enabled me to focus on Floodgate full-time since 2018. So now it's my thing. It's what I do with all my time, is think about and make games. So we're on our, I believe, 12th title, and have a whole bunch of cool stuff planned for next year. Most recently, we've just launched Cosmic Colonies. It's a game by Scott Alms it's an orbit drafting game of building a home on an asteroid. And then next up is Holy Festival of Colors, which is a game about...
See over your shoulder there.
Yeah, we've got the board set up over here. Yeah. It's about a festival that happens every spring in India, where you're celebrating the end of winter and most notably throwing colored powder on your friends. We do that with this 3D board. That one's by Julio Nazario.
Cool.
A really good time. So hopefully that's the self-contained history of Floodgate Games for you.
Hey, that works. That's all good. Jacob, what about you? What's the story of Hush Hush Projects?
Yes, basically it's a story about a game I wanted to create for my wife because I wanted to have her play games with me. And I have, as you can see this way, a lot of games behind me, but none of them were interesting for her. So I signed up for a competition at a Danish convention called Festival. That's actually this T-shirt I have on. So advertising. So a super cool Danish convention, but also making this game for her. And I haven't done any games before that. So my profession is to do innovation. So I'm a professional innovator, developing a lot of different stuff for other companies. But this was a project for myself and for her. And I used all my methodologies about how to be innovative, how to do stuff that fits with the target audience, with their preferences. And since she didn't like anything that is out there, and I'm doing something that fits with her preferences, but also other people like her, the product naturally became quite different from anything else out there. And that was also, and I could see that was also where it was heading. So I had my strategic eyes on that target to do something and perhaps be able to do a company around that. And initially, I put it out to other publishers because I knew that it was a super big thing to be a self-publisher. But none of the big publishers actually dared to take it up. So they loved the game. They tested it, and then all the big publishers got it and tested it, and then they had super feedback. And then I was, it's going to publish, and I'm getting a game out there. So it's a dream many people have. And then I got a no from all of them because there was no game like this out on the market. So obviously there was no market for it. I was like, no, that's not true.
Oh, yeah, apparently. So it might be useful if you say what the game is because you've not actually given the name.
My game is Fog of Love. So it's a romantic comedy as a board game, Fog of Love. And then, so I decided to make a Kickstarter myself. And it was a huge endeavor, as you all know. It's people tell you that it
took off a little bit.
So people tell you that this is so everybody who has done a Kickstarter knows that this is crazy. But then as a newcomer, I can do it. Of course, you are saying that it's difficult, but I can do it. So I went ahead and did it, and then had a lot of stress, but managed to finalize it and get it out on the market, and it has become a quite big success. And this has allowed me now to be full-time designer and full-time publisher.
Cool. So you should know out of everyone, Jacob, that when people say they want innovation, it's like, I want it, but I don't want it too much.
Yeah, that's true.
I want the same, but a bit different.
Yeah, and then the thing is, but the good thing about innovation is that it allows you as a newcomer, for example, my company, to enter a super competitive market, and it's our market is extremely competitive, and actually create a product that has a unique space there and still continues to sell. And our distributors tell us that they don't understand why it sells. Actually, it does not fit any of the categories they have for the products they know will sell. So it shouldn't sell, but it continues to sell. And now they have given up actually analyzing, but they're still selling it.
I'll just take the money. It's okay.
Yeah, so that's good. And I think so that way, being really pushing the envelope and really trying to be innovative, of course, doing stuff that fits with some needs out in the market can be super beneficial and actually allow an indie publisher to thrive.
Cool. So can I jump in, Michael? On this?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, before we kind of jump into more questions, there is something that links the three of us together in terms of the three companies. So Ben, I'm wondering if you want to explain the link between Hub Games, Hush Hush Projects, and Floodgate.
Yeah, sure.
It does sound like a weird riddle, but
like there's going to be this big reveal. We all work with the same person who helps us out with sales to distributors and international partners, Rich Gain. We all independently felt like this was a really advantageous situation to have one person selling complementary products through distribution and being able to have our message heard by our distribution partners and international partners more frequently. And then when we're able to all get together, hopefully even parlay that into being able to cross-promote our games at conventions and such. I feel like I've respected what Hub and Hush Hush have been doing for quite a while. And I feel like there's a lot of synergies and a lot of, again, complementary products and experiences to be had by our respective fans. So I'm really excited to see how far we take that.
I mean, and I think it's one of those kind of pragmatic things as as indie publishers, that the challenge with distributors is usually the cost of shipping for them to buy directly from you. Because and for retailers to be able to get their hands on it, that by actually kind of joining together, and we've even started storing all of our product in the same warehouse facility. Big shout out to R&R in the US. It basically makes it easier for a distributor to order our games collectively and more frequently so that they have it in stock as well. So it's kind of one of those little things. By banding together, it's kind of helping all of us. And I think from our perspective, then I know we're able to kind of share our international contact list of distributors, and them then being able to access Fog of Love or Sagrada and Bosk is great from their perspective, when they wouldn't have really maybe had the opportunity to look at it or consider it for their territory as well. So it's kind of an interesting synergy, that working together.
Yeah, because normally you need to be a bigger company to be able to afford this kind of service, and also in order to have enough products on your shelves to be able to continuously call the different distributors and also stores. But because we are banding together, we actually together have enough variety and enough interesting stuff to talk about all the time. Yeah, every time, all the time.
And I think we have to give credit to Rich Gain, who is our kind of international sales director. I'm not sure the correct term, but his vast experience both as a retailer and then having worked with Japan Made Games, and also then coordinated so many cons and organized demo teams for that. He brings, I think, a huge amount of experience and passion to what he's doing. So it's always good when you've got someone who actually cares about games, is actively talking and selling them on to the distributors as well around the world.
And
so he's going to be watching this, and his head is going to be growing 3 sizes that day.
Well, the alternative is, if we don't mention his name, he's going to sulk.
I mean,
No.
true.
Sorry, Rich.
I've really appreciated his leveraging a lot of those experiences to be able to help feed back into games that are in development, to like really helping shape and make sure what we're doing makes sense and kind of tweak. Going from, I think the three of us tend to get pretty big with what we want things to be, and he's been helpful with reining it in and kind of shaping things for me, at least.
It's actually funny because when I was first working on Prism Arena, I went straight to Rich at Gamma like 2 years ago and sat him down and played a really rough prototype with him and one of his key demoers. And they didn't think it was terrible. And I was like, that's good enough for me.
It's a good start, Grant. Everything's fine.
Yeah. There's a couple of, they really like the combo cards in the game, like right back in that early iteration of it, which was just printed out and colored in paper. So it's like I kind of knew we were onto something with it at that point. But yeah, he doesn't pull any punches, which is hard but good as well.
Super healthy.
That is for sure. All right, so question for, I guess, so Rory, you're basically like an interviewee and this episode. So I'm going to sort of like throw a question out for all three of you. Obviously, with sort of like this loose cooperative, I guess, is probably a decent way to describe it. Do you see that sort of thing as a like the future of independence? Like, can small companies stand on their own 2 feet, or do you think that they should be looking to work with other companies out there? Let's throw it to Rory first.
I think a lot has changed since we started with the Creativity Hub, like way back. The number of games that are out there. I think the role of the distributor has changed. So in the past, you could kind of give a game to a distributor and they would actively promote it within their territory to retailers. The retailers would be aware of it. They would stock it. And a couple of things have changed, with Kickstarter being kind of full of like noise in the positive and negative sense. It kind of eats up a lot of bandwidth, I think, for say other games that mightn't get seen, and the timing is really weird. Like, you're talking about a Kickstarter months before the game appears, and that's at a time when new titles are coming out. So you've kind of got that awareness aspect. Distributors are finding it harder to give time to each title because their catalogs are growing. And so that was one thing we kind of realized with Hub Games, was that we've got some great distributors, but they're also struggling in terms of giving. Is that Kira?
No, that's Dee. Dee is just coming. Thanks, Dee. Cheers for that. Kira is actually fast asleep over there.
Okay. So I think the challenge as a publisher is if you can't rely on the distributor to be able to kind of make people aware, not necessarily through any fault, like it's just there's so much stuff out there, and unless you're already successful, it's hard for them to do that. I think by kind of banding together, then you can help give distributors incentives for why they should be talking about your products, like that. Collectively we're able to reduce their kind of shipping costs, which is an important thing. It helps increase their margin, which is an important factor if they're going to talk about your game as well. So I don't know if it's the answer, but it's definitely something we're trying and already seeing benefits from doing that. And for me, it's great to be in the company of such great titles as well. It makes it easier to kind of recommend them to our existing distributors as well. And if we make our distributors' lives easier, it helps that way. And I suppose I hope to learn about Kickstarter from you guys as well. Maybe for the future.
So Ben, let's throw it over to you. What do you what do you see, or what do you kind of want, I guess, from this co-op, this coming together, this meeting of minds?
I'm really looking forward to, from the distribution side, having this sort of smooth out the continuing conversation and relationship with distributors, so it's not so staccatoed where you're like, hey, we have a new release, and then you kind of don't have much of a reason to reach out, without sort of banging on the same drum over and over again until your next big release or something like that. But this way we can kind of say, hey, here's a new thing from one of our partners. And then, by the way, do you need restock on this? And it kind of makes more sense of that continual conversation as opposed to it sort of banging on someone's door about your big thing all of the time, and or at these really infrequent spots. So that aspect from the distribution, conversation, and long tail relationship side, I'm really excited about. But more internally, I'm also just excited to have people with experience like your guys being able to work a little more closely together and kind of show and tell about what we're working on ahead of time, and really get and give feedback. I know for me, I feel like I get really close to my projects in ways that make it a little bit difficult to see some big blind spots. And then if you stay in that spot for too long, you end up going really far down a path where you either have to sort of kill the whole project and uproot your whole timeline, or kind of ship something that maybe could have been better had you made some changes earlier on that were pointed out earlier in the process. So getting that sort of feedback from people I trust, but also people I know are sort of thinking about the long tail in a similar way, have very similar goals for their product lines and such. I think that's a particularly unique bit of feedback that I'm looking forward to getting and contributing to myself.
Cool.
It's a lot of instant baseball though. Like
I'm down with that.
All about what we're doing with each other, ultimately to produce better games for all of our fans respectively. So that's where it starts to matter to you, our kind viewer. But yeah, definitely what I'm looking forward to process wise.
Because Jacob, your company Hush Hush Projects is obviously a bit different because there is one central product, Fog of Love. There are some expansions, but that product is a juggernaut. Let's put it that way. It's done all right for itself. So, what are you hoping to gain from this group endeavor?
So for us, there's two things. Of course, one thing was just like the necessity of the situation. So Rich is like formally hired in our company, and one of his main jobs was to go to conventions and represent us at conventions, and then also do some sales. But like 80% of his work was focused on conventions and events, and these are gone. And how to make that, how to be able to keep it on board and still make it worthwhile, like cost-wise. That was one question, of course, that was important, and you need to take this into account as a small company. So this is a way to make it to actually be able to continue to work with Rich, which I love. But and also give him something interesting to do because we are not. So it's not like he's like calling 5 times as much now because he has 5 times as much time just for sales, because he cannot do that. But now with you guys on board, we can actually utilize his effort much better, and he has much more fun doing his work, and it's smarter. So the part of this is, of course, due to the situation with the COVID crisis. The other thing that also is somehow related to that is it's pretty lonely actually to be a self-publisher. So of course I have some people I game with, but in these times it's super difficult to meet up. And I'm not meeting any people I don't know at the moment. And I'm only meeting people I know, and that I know very closely. And I'm not meeting any people from the international community, which I'm part of. And this gives energy to our work. It gives me satisfaction, and it makes this work fun. And being able to do this together is actually giving some fun back again, because it hasn't been fun just to be alone here and just work on my own and being apart from everyone else. So by creating this collaboration. We actually it's more fun for me to work and less lonely, and that's I think super important.
Nice.
That's cool. I mean, I think as you are, obviously we've known each other for a couple of years as well now, and you are definitely a person who thrives on the energy of other people. You love having other people around you. You are like king of the board game extroverts, and that is a fantastic thing. But yeah, it's interesting, like, that is an important thing, because I think that's actually an important thing for all three companies. It is just the knowing that you are not out there on your own. It's not just an individual fight. There's people on your side, because a lot of companies I've seen kind of forget that, and they won't sort of knock on somebody else's door, or they won't go over to another person's booth at a show because they're just worried that I don't know, maybe it's worried that they'll seem weak or they'll seem inexperienced. But it's like, no, we are a community that is focused on communal activity. So, the community ends at the table, but it's also like there's hundreds and thousands of us, all with our own knowledge bases, all with our own information available. So goddamn, use it.
I think sometimes the challenge is if people come, because sometimes there's also the issue where people come with a kind of a taking mentality, because you arrive and you're desperate to sell this game that you've kind of invested in, and you're like, I got to make this work and I don't want to seem weak. And sometimes you can engage in conversation and it comes across as kind of one-sided, I just want stuff. Whereas a willingness to be vulnerable, to just go, I'm really stuck, or I'm struggling, or I've no idea. Would you be willing to help? I think you'd find like 99% of people in the industry would be like, yeah, okay, here's what, we've learned, or let me introduce you to someone. I mean, that's, for me, actually, that's one of my favorite things about the industry, is if I think I can help someone by connecting them, because I'm also helping distributors and other publishers find games or connect with people. I don't see it as a competitive thing. And I think that's sometimes the concern, is it's like, if the perception is we're all competing with each other, you'll stay in your booth and not go across and talk to someone else. But I think if you're willing to be a little bit vulnerable, you'll find that people are more than willing to step up and help out as well. Have you guys found that, or what's your experience?
Yeah. Interestingly, I was just thinking, I feel like I used to get far more unsolicited requests for advice and help when I was less experienced than I am now. So I don't know if maybe what I've done.
He knows too much. He's too powerful. We can't talk to him.
I don't know. Like, I've turned people off from like, I don't really care what this guy has to say anymore. Or I don't know if it's that, or maybe it really is this sort of, hey, as I'm trying to create a more polished presentation of my products and booth and everything, that may make my company look less approachable for those purposes, for the sort of, hey, I just want some advice sort of perspective. And it's kind of, I'm sort of having a moment here where I'm like reflecting on, hey, that's maybe a bit of an unfortunate sharp edge to trying to achieve some of those goals, from attempting to present yourself as this polished, like well put together company, giving the impression that we're untouchable or unreachable in a reasonable way. But I
like, it's almost like, oh, they're the guys who did Sagrada. Oh, we shouldn't sort of like talk to them. They're the mean girls.
Definitely don't want to project anybody's like opinions on them or anything. But it's been interesting seeing that sort of those two or inversely correlate to each other.
So my experience with the industry has been it's extremely open and helpful. So I just started our company like 4 years ago with the first booth. Yeah, 4 years ago, that was our first booth at Essen. And I did not know what I was doing. It was actually my second time at Essen. I had been there a year before just for 2 days. So as a guest, so I actually didn't know what Essen was for real. And then I was presenting a prototype of a game. And the good thing was that a lot of people came to my booth and say, okay, I can see that you're trying something. It's super interesting. I can also see that you don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. And in a super friendly way. They weren't imposing or anything, but they could see that. Of course, I was new. I didn't really know what I was doing. So they were super kind and helped me. And then they said, they also introduced me to other people and more people. And I was like, suddenly I began to know people. And then I saw Rory in our hotel lobby. I was afraid to ask him anything because he was the famous Rory, and I was like, and then the next year we began to and then I saw Rory again in 16, and then in 17 we finally launched our game, and we had a lot of problems with our logistics, totally messed up. And then our games didn't arrive at Essen, so it was really like and then but they would arrive the week after, and then I spoke with Rory and his team. What should we do? And you just helped me so much at that time and saved our ass. Because if you hadn't helped us, we would have lost so much money. So I wouldn't have actually have been able to continue. So that was some eternally thankful for that. And then of course I got to know you and got to know a lot of other people, and we are talking, and I think that's a lot of what's happening at these conventions. It's not just sales talk to a lot of like unsuspecting customers, and where we are pushing products. We are also meeting each other as a community, and we are helping. And now what I'm experiencing, I've done some interesting things with my game, both in terms of design, but also in terms of how I market it, and learn some stuff that others can learn from. And then I've been super happy about then contributing with my new insights and sharing that, because it's fun, and it's fun to give back. And I don't feel that we are competing, because what we are competing against is Netflix. It's about we are competing against the drinks in the bar. We are competing against anything else that people are spending time on, because there's so much opportunity for people to take up games. So it's not. I think there's so much opportunity to spread the word, and if we all become better, I think we can all grow. So it's definitely not a null-sum game, and I think that's also the experience and how we interact.
But I think, and just highlighting what I know Josh is half joking in his post. We
just had Josh pop up, says, I've been told I have no idea what I'm doing for the better part of 40 years. It's just like, dude, I've seen you at conventions. You know what you're doing.
No, but like, I think it can be quick and easy to assume that, but a lot of us are like constantly trying to figure things out. And especially if you're constantly doing things differently or trying to do things differently, you're constantly having to learn and figure out new stuff. Part of this team up comes from us coming from like Rory Story Cubes, which was really successful as a game. But now switching to Hub Games and being an indie company, like the things we took for granted that had happened with the Creativity Hub, aren't there with Hub Games, and we're having to start from scratch. And Michael, we've talked a lot about marketing and building our kind of following, because that shift of, if distributors aren't promoting the games, like how do you get awareness for it? With huge nod to Sagrada and Fog of Love in terms of reaching outside the normal gaming audience. But I was kind of thinking, Ben, I was actually looking at your website today, but I'm going, God, there's some really nice stuff there that I'd like to kind of be inspired by, because Michael, we've been kind of talking about the changes we're making to the website, but there's constantly, I don't know, I always kind of go, if I ever think I'm there, well, then that's just hubris is taken over. I think all of us are dealing with issues of uncertainty about, what's the best thing to do, because contrary to a game where you might know what the optimal outcome is, and, I still argue that's why we play games, they give us certainty in life. life itself doesn't tell you when you've made the right choice. It doesn't score you victory points to kind of go, well done, you made the right choice.
What strategy will you try next time?
Yeah.
Or perhaps you get a couple of victory points, but is that a lot, or is just, or am I actually lagging behind now? So you've got 10 victory points. That's good enough.
There is no gauge for how well we are doing. So I got another question for you. As independents, and whether it's like working together as a group or not, what strengths do independent companies have? So if you compare like our three companies to like the big boys, like Asmodee, like, or before sort of like the Asmodee conglomeration came together, like the Fantasy Flights, what can we do that's better than the big boys?
I think we can have it's the distance between your creative vision and actually executing that. So the distance between that is so small. So you can have your creative vision and actually execute. And I think we are all creatives here as well, and that's both a boon but also a flaw sometimes. But small indie companies can create some amazing products. And I think that's also that's also something that's relevant for our industry, because it is possible for a small company to do a product from end to end, because we are not coding for thousands and thousands of hours of computer time. It's of course sometimes we need to hire a graphical artist or something else, but it's all within the realm of feasibility, and we can do stuff that is amazingly interesting. And create amazing games. Of course, so that's I think that's definitely one of our strengths, that we can do stuff that big companies have difficulty with, because it drowns in corporate culture.
Ben, what about Flood? I mean, is there anything like you think Floodgate particularly does strongly?
For me, it's just trying to really get an in-depth read on what it is people expect of you, and how can you shape that as a publisher, and can I build an audience as a publisher where people will follow you continually and say, hey, I know what to expect. It's going to fall into this general sort of categorical box, but still impress people and delight surprisingly along the way. It's a really fascinating, like, how do you meet people's expectations in a surprising way when those two are usually against each other? I find that to be the core, like one of the things I think about the most is how to go about doing that. And I feel like when you have a lot of, to Jacob's point, a lot of process, a lot of expectation, and a particularly extensive, let's say, catalog or team, I think a lot of what you end up getting is a bit more diluted and a bit more toward a lowest common denominator, and that can work, and that can definitely get you to, by whatever metric, a successful product or experience. But really, I think you end up missing out on a lot of, you get stuck in like local maxima instead of being able to sort of say like, hey, over here is sort of this fresh territory that maybe is unseen because process just won't let you get there.
It's funny. I know you said diluted, but it also sounded like diluted, which kind of can also be used to answer that question. Bigger companies become a little bit diluted. For myself and Anita have had this conversation before, and I think one of the big things with indie companies is the sense of ownership over what you're putting out. When people don't have a sense of ownership, they're not willing to put their hands up and say something's kind of gone off the rails or something isn't quite working here. Whereas Michael, I know it's driven you crazy, but we have a strong sense of ownership over all the titles we put out, even if it's not, it doesn't have like my name or Anita's name on the box. It's still like, we are going to be the ones talking about that game, and presenting it, and we have to feel passionate about it, and it means we're going to push things extra hard and question it in a way where other people will be like, no, that's good enough. Like, let's get it out. Or because the hitting the targets becomes the bigger issue because you're in a system that has to do certain things. We can always ask the question, can we tolerate this? So if we're going to make this change or do something or delay it or put extra effort into it, can we tolerate the consequences of what's going to happen? And I think it's easier to have that conversation with a smaller team than it is with a larger one, because you're like, oh, I just don't want to get into that, and you'll just like sign the thing off and move it ahead. Being an indie has downsides to it, but I think that's the strength, that ownership and the willingness to then take risks that can come with that, because you're willing to take the consequences of that risk as well.
Yeah. And I think this about the risk taking. So that's also something we did with our alternate covers. So we launched new versions of Fog of Love, actually the same game but with new covers with same-sex couples, so 2 men or 2 women, and now we just launched a new cover with this disabled person in a wheelchair to show that these also need, of course, they need to be represented, and we can do it. And this is not something big companies are doing. Or you have also been quite pushing diversity in your games, and also including representing a wider variety of people. And I think it's important, and this is something we can do. So also drive social change. And I think the big companies are more risk averse. They are in the middle of the mainstream, and then they don't dare to be as vocal initially. Of course, they will follow up because they are good people, and I think that's one of the good things in our industry. It consists of so many good people, so of course they won't resist, but they are not leading this change. And this is something we can do.
I definitely think there is that. As an independent publisher, as a smaller team, you can be more nimble, I guess. You can instigate and introduce changes a lot quicker, and you can bring those in. So we got a question from Jos, who says, any favorite games from other indie game publishers? I actually want to widen that out a little bit more. So yeah, if there's favorite games that like you really, really love, give them a shout. But are there any other publishers out there who you are really, impressed at how they work, or how they put themselves forward? Shout out and celebrate the people who you really, really like.
Oh man, there's so many. I'm gonna upset somebody.
I'm gonna kick off. I'm gonna say Formal Ferret. I love what Gil's doing. He's all over the board with ideas, and each game that he's putting out brings something completely different to his set of products that he's putting together. I love it, and I love the passion that he puts into his projects. You can tell that he cares so much about what he's working on. His name's on everything, so hopefully that would be the case. But huge fan of what he's putting together.
I think, So one company that I'm really impressed by, and that I think is doing wonderful stuff, is Awakened Realms. It's not they're doing something very different from us in some ways, at least, but they're creating extremely story-driven games, and they are so focused on that, and they are hiring the best authors they can in Poland and other countries as well, and they're really conscious about how to use talent and do something that is create amazing universes and also deliver on amazing quality products. So I think it's very different from our games, but it's also very different from the big mass producers out there. In some ways, they are similar to Fantasy Flight Games, but they are going much further than they are. I think creating wonderful stuff because they are so much. They're so vision driven as well.
I am like frantically looking around my room to try and see. There's two that kind of come to mind. my first thought was actually Pandasaurus, but I was like, oh, they're a big company now.
Yeah, but are they? It's just
no, they're not
Nathan
at
and
all.
Molly.
No.
Yeah.
No. I'm kind of half joking, but it's also to me a nod to, I think, what a great job they've done in terms of getting their games out. I wanted to tag some European companies. One immediately that comes to mind is Brain Games in Latvia, publishers of Ice Cool and is it Team Up as well?
Team 3.
Yeah, Team 3. Just I know Eggles and the team. They were like a distributor for Rory Story Cubes, and I just love the sensibility they bring to their games and really thinking about their audience. And I'm always so happy when I see like people at cons in the UK and in the US, really enjoying their games, because it's one thing for, I think, an English language company to be doing that, but there's hurdles that people have to get over when working in different languages. And I love seeing the uptake of their games. And then the other shout out is, to me, it's kind of like a collective. I know it's not, but they all get on so well together. It's now Horrible Guild Games in Italy and Yamaya. So they're two different Italian publishers, but they're just like one big family. And I love how they all work together and talk. And, Michael, you'd know them as our neighbors at both Essen and Nuremberg, though they did move. They abandoned us this year. Not getting over that one.
Nuremberg is always a delight, because like we would be there like 2 days before, like meticulously putting together our booth for the toy show, and then they rock in the morning of the show actually opening, fire a couple of stickers up on some blank white walls, and just go, "Yeah, we got the games. Come get them, baby." And it's like,
and then they're busy
love
the whole
you
time.
and hate you. Yeah. Like I'm peeking behind them, they're just going, "All right, you doing okay?" Michael's just like,
yeah. But I think the sensibility they bring to their games.
Yeah,
I love it, and the humor that they have.
Yeah,
I want to give a bonus answer to this question.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite things that's happened is Grey Fox Games. They just closed out Kickstarter for Arcana Rising, and that's a game I was assessing when it was a prototype, and it's like, I just don't know quite what I would do with this. And Tim's a great designer, and I didn't know that they ended up picking it up and developed it and when I saw the Kickstarter project, I was like, that looks so cool. Way to go, guys. Like it was so fun to see a game that I didn't quite know what I would have done with, and see a group like that just really slam it home. Was so cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to give a couple of shouts as well. Like, if you want true freaking punk rock indie, Matt Fantastic is just so you all nodding, yeah, because he just does not give a toss and will just make the things he wants to. He makes the stuff he wants to see in the world. So he's got like his current Kickstarter for Shitty Werewolf, which is like a brand new take on Werewolf, but it's got a very Matt handprints all over it. Like hell, he did the wrestling game Hey Brother, but the rules of the entire thing are on a Hulk Hogan style bandana, like red and yellow bandana, and it's just about sort of like cutting promos on each other and saying "Hey brother" a lot, which is great. He just loves making weird and wonderful and beautiful things. But then, of course,
Team 3 also.
Yeah, yes, and then he like jumps and does stuff like Team 3, and he does the he did the X-Files game like last year, and it's just like, what? How? What, dude? How that happen? And then, of course, Emma Larkin as well, who is amazing, who's made some like fantastic stuff like And Then We Died, which, again, pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelopes. If we're looking for like another bigger company, Leader Games as well.
Yeah.
Like when I first played Vast, I actually bounced off it incredibly hard. I did not enjoy the experience at all, which actually kind of turned me away from trying like the follow-up route for the longest time. but then when I actually did play Root, it was like, oh my god, this is excellent. And now, of course, we've got 4 like my copies right there. We should play it soon sometime, Rory. And it's I just love how they've built this community around their games who are sort of, they're fervent. They're always looking forward to the next stuff. They're always looking forward to trying the new stuff, but they're also very much about supporting the titles that are already out as well, which is great because Ben, you mentioned earlier the whole thing about the long tail. Getting a game to have a long tail, to constantly be selling, to get those reprints regularly coming out is an incredibly challenging thing to do. But if you've got the people who are playing it on your side, that is absolutely invaluable. And it's, there are other companies out there who, I'm not going to say names, but they have that sort of like slavish, fervent fan base who you can go up, if you go up against and say anything bad about the game, you might get some little bit of kickback. But Leader, I've just found them just absolutely bloody delightful all the time. Absolutely lovely. And they've managed to sort of do that cohesive thing all the way through because they've got Kyle doing the art on like pretty much everything. You can walk into a shop and you can look across the place and go, oh, okay, that's definitely a Leader Games product. They've done that incredibly well.
So I think that kind of leads to an interesting question, and it's part of our struggle at the moment in terms of what Chris Anderson from Wired referenced to as the 1,000 fans. Like, if you're going to engage in creative activity, can you build up the 1,000 fans who will always buy your work? Or, and the idea being, whatever that number is, can you build up a core base of people who, no matter what you create, will buy it and enable you to keep doing what you do? So I don't think any of us are in the games publishing business to make our fortunes. It's, for me, it's being able to put things out that are meaningful and earning enough to be able to keep doing it. That's kind of the main thing. But I'm curious, like, because I want to learn from you, how important has that notion of like 1,000 fans or building up your fan base, how important has that been to your success as an independent company?
It's a very good question. So on one hand, we wouldn't be there if we didn't go to Essen and then met people who became fans like right away and supported me and us right from the start, because that gave us so much energy and motivation to continue, because without that I wouldn't have continued, because it was very, very, very tough initially. And then I did my Kickstarter, and on one hand, and I was so lucky to have a Kickstarter where people almost didn't complain, even though they had reason to, because I was so late, and people was super supportive. Of course, some complained, but again, in a very reasonable manner, super friendly, and it was helpful. So in that way, of course, again, it can be very lonely to do this, and fans are supportive and important. But I also think it's important, and I think, and this might be a bit controversial, that I think a lot of indie companies put too much weight on actually selling to fans, rather than understanding that they have a product and that the market is much bigger out there. And if the companies understood how to market in a wider fashion and really make the product beautiful, put it on the shelves, push it out, and do proper marketing, the product can have much better lifetime and sell much better. And I think a lot of indie companies are too self-limiting, because we are blinded by the people we see and our fans that we meet at the conventions. And of course, they are important because they are the creative lifeblood. So in that sense, they are super important. But we shouldn't forget about everyone else out there, and how we can serve them and do products and great products that also look like they are interesting for other people than the core fans. Because I think too many products have a visual appeal that is too limiting.
Yeah. And what about you, Ben? What's your experience?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the game. I don't disagree with what you're saying in some specific scenarios, Jacob. But what I've found is, I try to take care of our fans. We've got a few folks who pay attention to everything we're doing, and that's amazing. We really try to take care of those folks. But you're absolutely right. At least for my games, I don't have a chance to have a conversation or anything with the majority of the folks who are buying our games. That being said, if you look at like Leader, for example, I mean, I don't want to speak too much I can't speak for the internals, but from looking from an outsider perspective, it does look like the fans are the market for them versus for the games we're making, where they sort of sit in this more crossover territory where they're interesting to gamers or some gamers, but they're really interesting to a lot of people who don't identify that way, or even if they don't get involved conversationally. I think the three of our companies, seem to sit in that same interesting intersection where we do need to kind of do both, take care of the people whose attention we have, but then always keep in mind that no, for our products to be successful, we're not ever going to build that fervent fan base from the BGG crowd, for instance. They're just not going to be there necessarily, but there is a market there. And how do we get to them?
I think my take would be to kind of build on what you're saying, Jacob. It's helpful to have a base minimum. Like, I would say the 1,000 fans isn't like all of who you're going to be kind of ever selling to, because you just can't function that way. But it's good to know that there's people there who are interested in what you're doing, who are going to act as amplifiers for it as well. So that, when you're talking about something, it gets magnified by them talking about it, rather than it's all just coming from the one source. Because I think that's the challenge with, the old adage of marketing, you need to see something multiple times before you act on it, is so true. And that's not going to happen by you just saying, Hub Games putting out the same thing or in 7 different ways. It needs to come from different sources. And that's where having a kind of core base of fans who like what you're doing, whatever you do, is helpful. And it's interesting for Hub Games because we, rightly or wrongly, we always try to do something different. With each new title, we're trying to do something different, and you're almost like reinventing the fan base sometimes with each different game. Rather, I look at Leader games and I'm like, why don't we just do that?
I think to elaborate a bit on that, because I think a lot of the indie game publishers, they are very like game focused, so they're creating intricate games that, of course, cater to a certain audience that have very geeky and nerdy needs for these super intricate games. And of course, you can have fans based on this kind of intricacy, and they love this intricacy, and they love this kind of gameplay. But you can also have fans in a different way, and that's perhaps some of the unconscious approach that we have had, because we are very much focused on values and some certain messages that we want to spread, and also, of course, some types of experiences that we want to create. So in that sense, for example, a fan I met when I was in the Gen Con 2 years ago, there was a woman who just came to me and gave me a hug while we were out on the bar in the evening drinking with our team, and she came there and said and thanked me so much, and I was like, wow, why? And she was not a gamer, but she's but she knew about this game, and she had played this with a boyfriend, and then realized that she's lesbian. So this game helped her actually realize who she was, and then she broke up with him. Of course, he wasn't that happy initially, but
then he came up and punched you.
No, he wasn't there. But of course, in the end, it helped them change something. And this is, and I think this kind of feedback, but is of course extremely. It's something I will cherish forever. But it's also something that means that she will, of course, she will be a fan in a completely different way. And I love that kind of relationship with people. So doing something that is not just meaningful in a like technical sense. It's intricate in a technical way, but it's also meaningful for them personally. And I think in this way, of course, we will be able to grow our fan base, even though we create very different games, because for at least for us, our values and the types of messages that we want to create and the kind of experiences we want to create, that's important. So yeah.
So she was just upgraded from fan to zealot.
Yeah, that's true.
And we call them super fans, Rory.
Yes, and that's also, if you look into, again, if you have like a cynical marketing perspective on that, that's also, if you can make people begin to talk about your game as something they love rather than something they like, that of course changes the conversation. But you cannot do that without being genuine and really honest about what you want to do, because of course people can see through that. And I love, for example, what United Colors of Benetton did. And they have always been like what I wanted to do with our company, because I think, at least historically, what United Colors of Benetton did, of course, they did a lot of different products for clothing, but they had clear values and they really stood by these values. I think that way you can do something interesting.
So I know from my perspective that those comments from people are worth so much more than a kind of a reviewer review. They're great for selling the game, but the ones that stick with you are those kind of personal comments. I'm wondering, Ben, have you got any experiences like that where people have given you feedback on a game where you're just like, okay, I'm going to cherish that?
People have used Sagrada to propose to each other, and I can't imagine much more of a higher honor than like being a part of a project that someone uses to like connect. Like that means they're using this game to connect with someone, and it was so important to them, that connection created through our game, that they needed that to be a special part of creating this like bigger connection between themselves. Amazing to me. And it's happened more than once, which is phenomenal, and hopefully doesn't discount anybody's experience that it's happened more than once.
I just imagine someone coming up to you going, "Yeah, I used to grad to divorce my partner."
Right? Yeah.
It's when you go full circle.
If that was positive for them, then we're here for it. That's a good thing.
No, that we use Fog of Love for breakups, and then.
Well, actually, I do want to jump over to the chat, because Andrew asked a little while ago, Jacob, what advice do you have for a married couple that wants to play Fog of Love? I'm worried it will mix with reality a bit too much.
Oh, thank you for that question. So actually, this question is the number one question I'm getting like from everyone. So right from the beginning on, when we started testing the game, people were worried, is this something I can play with my partner? And so even when we tested it, it was a question I was aware of. And then afterwards, because we have tested the game around 1,000 times. So afterwards, we asked people, okay, so how did you feel about each other when you were breaking up? They looked at me, why do you ask us that? But it was a question you had. No, we weren't concerned about that. Oh, you were. Were we? We forgot. And then actually, so afterwards, people don't understand why they should be worried about that. So I think I have heard, I've seen the game played many more times than 1,000 times now. It's crazy, and I've heard about so many games being played, and I've heard about a few episodes where people have had a problem with that, where it came too close to reality. Actually, one of them was by a couple of very important reviewers. That was a bit annoying. But in practice, very few have had this problem. So even, for example, Shut Up and Sit Down, who are super famous, initially when they talked about the game, they laughed and said they would never play it with their significant others. Then I met Quince later, and he introduced me to his wife. And said this is her favorite game, and I looked at him. Oh, but you said you would never play with her. Did I? I cannot remember. so I wouldn't be worried. Seriously, if unless it's worrisome to see a romantic comedy together and discuss the content of a romantic comedy because it comes too close to home, or any other kind of like drama. it's not dangerous at all. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Cool.
So
Ben,
I'm going
I'm
to give it to Dan as well.
Oh, yeah,
want to
sorry.
give it to Dan.
We'll probably Dan in there. Dan says, hi, Rory. And then shortly afterwards, and hi, all three others, of course. So, yeah, Ben, I'm kind of sad that I don't have somebody coming up with a question saying, what advice do you have for a married couple that wants to play Sagrada? I'm worried that they'll want to start making stained glass windows too much.
Yeah. The couple that crafts together stays together, right?
That's exactly how the saying
That's what
goes.
I always say.
I thought it would be more like, well, I want to join the priesthood or something.
Jesus, no.
No.
So in the chat, Josh did say that he loves Helvetique when we were talking about companies we wanted to give shout outs to. Also, he's just changed his picture. Thanks, Josh. That's disturbing now.
Can I just, I know we're kind of...
we'll be wrapping up shortly, but...
So I'm kind of curious, as both designers, so you've all designed games, Michael included, lots of popular games. How
you say popular, Rory?
I like them.
God bless you.
So as designers and publishers, like, I'm trying to think of the question to ask. How does that change your perspective? As a publisher, when you think about designing and when you're looking at games.
So, for me, that's because of my background. So I've been a consultant for many years. So I've consulted big companies in how to create products that are both interesting but also can be successful in the market. So for me, I think it's very, very natural for me to think both processes like continuously being intertwined. So I cannot think about a product without thinking about how it would somehow appeal and be interesting out there, and create and be different and unique. Because if I'm not doing that, I cannot make a livelihood. Because if I'm just doing a new game that is just a small improvement on something else, it's going to drown. And I'm not as talented as some of the best game designers out there to really compete against games that are already existing and create something that is very similar but tweaks it in a fashion so people really feel that this is a smarter way mechanically to do this. I cannot compete in that way. I can do stuff that is interesting experience-wise, and then and aim at new target groups, and that's what I'm trying to do. So for me, it's I would still design in the same way, even though I wasn't a publisher. I think I can actually go much further. I can take much bigger risks because I'm a publisher, because then I can make sure that I can actually execute on this. So I'm actually taking my ideas much further, I think, now.
And that's to clarify before I go to you, Ben, I think part of it is being a publisher, you're seeing the full cycle of the game. And I think that's what I mean when it comes to designing and developing. What have you really learned and taken on board?
Yeah, so I think about some of the material side of a product. So how is the box? How are the components? How is it presented in stores? Which kind of audiences do we appeal to? Which kind of events can we create outside of stores? How can we make it interesting to talk about, not just up to Christmas, but also during other times? So everything about the game that is somehow makes it viable out there is something I'm caring about. So, for example, with Fog of Love, when we expanded with the same-sex covers, that meant that suddenly Pride Week was also Fog of Love Week. So we have Valentine's Day, which is Fog of Love Day. We have Fog of Love Week. And then, of course, if you can create other events, then we have other opportunities for stores to talk about a game, for reviews to talk about a game. So for me, everything is intertwined. So and being a publisher allows me to think in this way, and I love that.
Cool. And what about you, Ben?
I think the biggest change I've seen after time publishing games is I treat the process more like let's let everything be really wide at first and kind of explore all the areas you need to want to development wise, talking through new designs and such. And then the further we get down the process, the more that scope tightens, and we start talking about what does this look like practically, and card counts and material choices. And so try to not let sort of what I know is going to happen stifle too much early on, but also you can't help but keep it at the back of your head so that you're always kind of, I try not to rein it in early too much, just to let the creativity flow, but it's tough not to as a publisher, and then definitely starts to ratchet down once we figure out what the game is about, and where we want it to go direction wise. Then it gets practical and pretty tactical and number crunchy in a product sense. Yeah,
I think. Well, Michael, what about you? And what's been your experience?
Constantly petrified, but that's probably just down to my crippling anxiety. I know. I think my time at Hub Games has been really, really different to a lot of people's experience, I guess. Y'all have been very okay with just sort of like letting me kind of be quite experimental, I guess. I mean, we've made some incredible stuff, and there's more incredible stuff to come down the pipeline. But it's like, let Michael sit in the corner and tinker away for a bit. And, as long as he gets everything else done, he can.
Because we're going to crush you.
Because we're going to make some weird things. So yeah, I have made some strange and glorious experimental like concepts and put them together, and it's been lovely. But yeah, there is always that thing, like there's my knowledge of how the sausage is made always has an impact. And Ben, I think you probably do it better than I do. You just got like, from what you said, you sort of like gone, everything is just like big and explosive, and let's see what weird stuff we can do. I think my brain shifts into, and now, Michael, you need to think about the production stuff more. I shifted into that a lot earlier. And I'm okay with that, because everybody designs in different ways. Everybody develops in different ways. And, sometimes, for me personally, I find working within a production limitation. So, hey, we need to produce this game for X amount of money, which means that you can have this amount of cards, this amount of pieces, and this size box. It makes me try and think around corners. And I actually enjoy that as a thought experiment. I enjoy that as a development process. So yeah.
So kind of from my perspective, one of the things we started doing to stop weird kind of, scope creep within the games is to basically identify the users of the game. So doing user profiles before we start working on the game. Once we have a rough idea, we say, okay, who are we designing this for? And that has to be like the key decision making as to what gets added into the game. So it'll influence the price, the complexity of the game, how the rules are written. And I think that's a key constraint that we put in place at the beginning. Like, we think of who the audience is going to be for the game, because we're constantly trying to target different audiences with the games. And then, like, I like working within like Michael was saying, I like working within the constraints. And there's a thing called TRIZ. It's called the Theory of Inventive Solutions, and it was designed by a Russian kind of engineer who actually did time in prison in Russia for his views. And he developed this theory where he reviewed patents and looked for like what was consistent between all of the patents, like what were key things that people did to have a breakthrough. And they came up with, I think it's 42 principles. And they're essentially, they can be distilled down to 8 key principles. And I'm constantly applying them. Like they're kind of ingrained in my head. It's like just breaking assumptions about things and about how things are used. And, very simple thing is, how can something do 2 different things at 2 different times? So a box needs to do something when it's on the shelf in the store, but once you've bought the game, it needs to do something different. likewise, when you're playing a game for the first game is different from what it's like when you have experience playing the game. Like the cards and the elements need to perform different functions at those points. So the more I can get the fewer elements to work harder within the game, I kind of know we're doing something different with that. And that's the bit I really enjoy. It's like if I'm not asking those questions, I kind of I worry. But that's been I do tend to do that from quite early on. Like the more I can think of something being multi-use or multi-purpose within the game, I know I can kind of reduce cost, card count, components, and make a more useful design.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to do one final question from the chat. Josh has asked, do you still enjoy playing games that are not being played for work purposes? For all, even Michael. So, I mean, as I was graciously included, yeah, of course. Like, you know, at the top of the show, we all shouted out stuff that we were enjoying and we all loved. Yeah, sometimes your brain can get a bit burnt out on like the 968th time you've tested something at the office, but when you go home, it's like, all right, let's, you know, every time game night comes around, I'm still excited for it. I'm still intrigued to see what's going to hit the table, or, you know, if I've planned something a couple of weeks in advance, it's just be like, yeah, okay, it's going to happen. Like, games are awesome. That's quite a simple answer.
So for me, games are both awesome by themselves, but it's also an awesome activity to do with friends. And for me, I'm always, when I'm playing with others, and I love that. So it's a fantastic activity to be together and enjoy a night out. And it can be a very simple game, a complex game, a new game, an old game, but I would never be bored by being together with my friends. And I think, and then having some interesting games, it's just adds to it.
Yeah. So I still love playing games. I miss my regular game nights that we're not able to have right now, and my stack of things to play is getting higher and higher. But I think what I'm enjoying the most is actually sort of like queuing up what I'm going to play once we're able to get back together more frequently with other. And that's been like kind of a nice, fun meta game in and of itself. Can't wait to share this with you and with friends and play those together.
So you're not meeting up with any people at the moment?
We're not in person over here, no.
Oh.
Yeah, remember, America's on fire. So
yes, they are.
Well, literally in some places. I could just imagine, Ben, you all turning up with bags of games.
Right? Yeah.
You're all in the same boat. It's like 6 people turning up with 5 games each. Let's play.
Whatever's overlapped, like that has to be the game we play.
Yeah. Knowing how big my lockdown pile of shame is, it's like, oh god, I can't imagine like 5 or 6 people coming together. It'd be right. Let's just set aside a week. So Roy, what about you?
Yeah, I live for playing games. Like, it's and my personality type is very much about wanting to try different and new things as well. So like even when I'm play testing, then I kind of look at the shelf longingly and go, oh, I'd like to play that game. Or like today, Ben from 5 Games for Doomsday was doing his countdown from 10 to 5. And he mentioned Orlean, which has a mechanic in it where I was like, oh man, I need to play that because it's part of a mechanic of a game I'm thinking about. So
you've not played Orlean?
No. Well, you can actually just look at Ben's list, and I don't think I've played any of them.
All right, I have got it downstairs.
No, I knew
it's
you
like my top 3 games of all time. It's freaking great. So we'll make that happen.
So yes, I really enjoy playing games, and I think the frustration is like when we'd have our game night and we'd be bringing along our prototypes to play with people, and it's like, I just want to play games, but I really have to test this game. I think that's the hardest thing, where I have to be a grown-up and like put the prototype first over my own desire to play games. It's the toughest.
Sounds good. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you to everybody in the chat who's also, throwing out questions and stuff. There's some interesting things. So, Liverpooliveria, I can never pronounce her name right. Thank you for jumping in. Dan as well. We can cover those questions in a future episode, of course. But for now,
I'm going to answer Olivia's question really quickly. Okay. You're selling to the parent. They're the one who's going to buy the game. The child isn't.
Kids don't have money.
Well, it's that thing I was talking about where the first sale is to the parent, and then the second, the multifunction of the game is it has to attract the parent to pick it up, but then there has to be something in it that the child's going to enjoy, and if you can also have something in it that the parent enjoys doing, then that's a bonus.
But I think it's also if the kids begin to talk with each other about the game. So, for example, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think Yu-Gi-Ohs are initially designed for parents. They are designed for kids to share with each other and get other kids to play and other kids to play and then the parents need to buy it.
Well, I'm just assuming Olivia doesn't have the marketing budget.
Yeah, that's true.
That has where you target the kids directly. That's a different thing.
All right, so let's do our socials wrap up, as it were. Ben, if folks want to find out more about Floodgate Games or getting in touch with y'all, how can they do so?
We are Floodgate Games everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then you can check out our new website, floodgate.games.
That's very good.
I'm really happy with it. So we have a new mascot too, so check out that.
It's very professional looking.
Yeah, and please reach out if you'd like to talk to me. I would love to hear from you. Don't let any of this intimidate you if it is.
And for us, it's Fog of Love. So we have a branding strategy like Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble, they are hidden behind it, but they have their big products out there. And for us, it's the big product that is our face. So it's Fog of Love on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and of course, website. So please reach out, and if you have any questions or if you want help or suggestions or whatever, I'm super interested in hearing from you.
Yeah, we need that new top level, that like .love top level domain, so you can just have Fog of .love. That would be
Fog of .love.
Cool. Meanwhile, for us, you can of course find us at We Are Hub Games everywhere. We've kind of fixed it. So yeah, if you just search for We Are Hub Games, it just pops up everywhere now, which is great. So that's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Still haven't done a TikTok. You can't make me. I'm an old man. But also, don't forget, we are now running weekly streams. It's not just the Wednesday nights. We're doing Monday and Friday, 2:00 in the afternoon UK time. So that's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time again. But they're all available on YouTube as well. And this coming Friday, Rory and I will be indulging in a battle for the ages as we take on each other in Prism Arena. So you can see him crush me.
Well, the special thing is that we're going to be introducing the use of powers. And so there's been like a lot of live plays of the game, and we've always played like the base version of the game. So this is the first game I think we're going to have kind of streaming where we'll have powers. And if you missed last Friday's game, was it last Friday? No, last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday,
game where the most epic thing happened at the end of the game. Go back and watch it. And then join us on Friday. While I do this again.
I need to seek revenge. It's going to happen.
That was so epic.
Shut up. Rude. You're meant to be a polite victor, and you come in here rubbing my nose in it like a dog on a carpet.
It's not that I won. It's just that I did that thing in the game.
Ben Jacob, he basically just killed all of my people in one round and just scored like 14 points in one hit. Ouch. It was shameful.
In one activation.
So
it was just it created this cascade that was delightful to behold, and it's never happened to me before in all of the time I played Prison Arena. So
You guys wanted a metric for success in life. I think you found it.
yeah, I'm never playing Prison Arena again. That's it.
That's it. It's done. Finished. Well, it's cool. Well, thank you very much indeed again for joining us, folks. Thank you to the chat for joining us, of course, as well. If you're watching this on YouTube on the replay, awesome, fantastic. Let us know how any of your points in the comments. We'll see if we can pick them up next week on the next episode. Like I said, I'll be back on Friday along with Rory. We'll be back again next Wednesday for another Hub Games Hangout. But for now, this is where we wave and where we say goodbye. So, ready, everybody? Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.